Hi gamers, it's Marina.
And Fancy.
And today we're looking at new Hearthstone news. Buddies are coming back. If you didn't catch our other video, we already went through all of the new and returning buddies. And now we're gonna take a look at the hero pool changes and the minions that are leaving and the minions that are returning. So let's hop into it. Alright, so in addition to adding buddies, they are making changes to minions, to heroes. We can see they're adding ETC back into the game, who is a hero, and their hero power lets you, I believe it's pay 2 or 3 gold to discover a buddy. Anybody's buddy. So ETC was a really interesting hero to see. It also says they made an update here to the Curator. Curator is banned in demon lobbies. And their reasoning for this is because Cultist would reborn the venomous... I don't know. I don't really see the big issue there. You can already give it, like, reborn and stuff. But anyway.
Some dev lost to a board full of curator minions and
Yeah, it's just strange.
Cultists.
Like, I don't think that's... Like, it says it's easily abusable, but I just don't see this being a, like... game-winning build.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but whatever. Cool.
Seems very situational to set up a board where you have the amalgams, enough amalgams with stats, and then cultists dropping them out again.
Alright, so we have hero updates. Alistraza is good now. Okay, Alistraza before used to be when you upgraded to tier 5, you would immediately discover 2 dragons from any tier. So that meant, wow, you could hit tier 5, discover a Caligos.
Or you could get 2 misfits and be very
Exactly. Or yeah, or you could get, you know, all tier 1s and 2s from your discoveries, and it would feel like you want to concede on the spot. So now, I think this is wild. So once you get to tier 4, this unlocks at tier 4, so you just don't have a hero power 1 through 3. When you get to tier 4, though, at the start of your turn, you just discover a dragon, because once you hit 4, that's when it matters. Most of the good dragon cards are tier 4 and below. So this, I think, is like... I will actually play Alistraza now. I was never playing Alistraza because I just didn't like the hero power, and most people don't. So I'm excited to see this new Alistraza. I think she's gonna be much better. Tathalon also got an update. I mentioned this earlier, but every 4th tavern spell now just costs 0. So basically, buy 3, get 1 free is how it works with spells. I think that's much better than before. It used to be your 3rd spell cost 1 less. Rakanishu, so just like their buddy, if you remember the buddy gives you lantern lights at the end of your turn, well now Rakanishu, instead of spending 1 gold to just give a minion stats equal to your tier, you spend 1 gold and it gives you a lantern light, which I think is a buff to this hero because it's giving you a spell. It allows you to do things like proc Grayman's Champion with an even tier card. It allows you to proc the, like, Peggy, who every time you add a card to your hand, you're giving your pirates extra stats. Stuff like that. I think this is good. Alright, minion pool updates. We'll put up a picture so you can see what these are, but we're getting rid of these minions: Augmented Laborer, Bizarre Dealer, Dead Stomper, Faceless Disciple, Gem Smuggler. Finally, I think a big hit to Quillbar with Gem Smuggler gone. Gold Shell Warden, Heedless Hoarder, Long John Copper, Reef Explorer, Time Captain Hooktail, Vengeful Slither, and Winged Chimera. So all those minions going bye-bye, and I'm kind of surprised they're getting rid of all those, and they're only adding a few in. Well, I guess they're adding new minions, brand new minions, so we'll look at those. But we're getting Poetic Pen Pal back, which is a buddy-specific minion. Also, Imposing Percussionist, the Demon, and Silent Swimmer, the Naga. So now you'll be able to give a minion stealth, which I think could be really good in this new meta. Alright, looking at new minions... We have our first one. It's a tier 3 non-typed minion, Baron's Brawler. And this is a battle cry, get a random death rattle minion. Interesting. I think we'll see how this goes. Getting minions is always potentially good. You have a Bran, you have a battle cry procs. This isn't a bad card. And then we see our tier 5 Baron's Conjurer, which is Death Rattle, get a random Battlecry minion. So I think these cards are going to be like okay to grab off a discovery. You put them on your board, you get some extra cards. If you're playing economy, you might grab some Barons Brawlers to just Battlecry, get some extra cards for cycling. I think this is interesting. I like the addition of these kinds of cards. So we'll see if they're any good. I think, like I said, they'll be fine on discovery. This one maybe less so. Like if you're in the later game, you might not want that, but I don't know. Who knows? You're playing Bran, and you get this. That's okay. I think also something to think about that is interesting is if you're playing Thorum, and you get a tier 7 Moira Bronzebeard, who has your battle cries and death rattles trigger twice. Both of these could be interesting cards to take for sure. All right, and then we have Arid Atrocity, which is an all-type minion. It is a 6 tier. This one's interesting. So this is a 7/7 that death rattle, summon a 7/7 golem, and give it +7/7 for each friendly minion type that died this combat. I don't know how good this is. The golden version is a 14/14 that gains +14/14 for each type that died. My initial thoughts are, okay, if you're not running Menagerie, like, how does this help you? I'm assuming the golem is an all-type that it spawns. So if it spawns an all-type golem, that can proc a Deflectobot for mechs. It's a beast, technically, if you're running, like, Goldren. You know what's also, I just realized, too. It's an all-type minion, right? So when it dies, it summons a 7/7 and it gives it 7/7 for each friendly minion type that died. This itself counts as a wild card minion type. So that means that when it dies, it's spawning a 14/14 guaranteed. Even if it dies first, right? So that's not bad to just play on your board, you know, if you need stats. And then the golden version is dropping out a 28/28, which again, at the end of the, if you're playing against giant Quilboar or giant demons, it doesn't matter, right? Like this is just a flick to them. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm curious to see what people do with this card. All right, Primate. This is a brand new tier 4 Beast Pirate. We got rid of Long John Copper and we added Primate, which is after a friendly death rattle minion dies, gain 1 gold next turn. Basically, if you have this on your board with Goldren, Mana Saber, Mechanized Gift Horse, any of those mechs, or sorry, any of those beasts, yeah, Spike Savior, any of the beasts that are death rattles, you can end up getting economy in Beast, which I guess helps you to try and find your Trigors or your Skyblazers, right?
Or it just helps you have a strong board and be somewhat support, sending your teammate cards with all the extra gold that you have.
Sure, yeah.
Because normally when you have a beast board set up, you don't have to change too many cards out, so
yeah,
you could just be a big board yourself and then use this card to kind of gain gold and help your teammate, at least in duos.
and in Pirate, if we think about Death Rattle pirates, you have that Recruiter that is a Death Rattle itself and then drops 3 Scallywags, which are all Death Rattles. That's the best combo I can think of right now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this kind of seems decent if you just have some Death Rattles on. You want to get a little bit extra gold. It's not the worst card. All right. Tier 6, Ghoulacabra. This is an undead beast. This is, I think, kind of a wild card. Whenever you trigger a death rattle, give your minions +2/+2 permanently. So the important thing here is it's when you trigger a death rattle, giving 2/2 permanently. Normally on beast builds, like a Goldren token build, you just have a bunch of tokens. Like, your board is not big. You have a bunch of tokens that spawn out and they're like kind of big, right? Now with this thing, it's whenever you trigger a death rattle, not, keep in mind, it's not whenever a death rattle minion dies. So that means it synergizes with Rivendare, right? Titus Rivendare. It synergizes with the Macaw, because those things are triggering death rattles, which can make this go off. So if you have a golden Macaw, a golden Rivendare, and some death rattle, you know, sitting there on your board, you're all of a sudden getting really big stats on your board, right? This is really, really, really interesting. You also have a bunch of death rattles in undead, right? So you can get your undead pretty beefy. This with a Sister Death Whisper. I'm curious to see how this goes. I think the one thing to keep in mind is if you play this with death rattles that you want to die because you want to trigger an important long-term effect, like board scaling or something. If you're going to be buffing your board with something like this because you get this early, you're lucky. You can end up doing too well in those early turns, getting your stats too big to where those death rattles aren't even dying. So that's just that's something that I would keep in mind. But I think in the mid to end game, or if you don't really care about, you know, the stats because they're not permanent, it's something like a Goldren where it's like just combat stats. I think this is great. I think this is going to be a really interesting card. All right, Lock Prince. This is a Murloc. This is a tier 4. This is a card that I think has a lot of potential, especially in the mid game. So this card reads, whenever this gains stats, add +2/+2 to that amount, wherever this is. And I think the wherever this is what makes this card really interesting. Because the most obvious thing to think of is cards in your hand, right? You have cards in your hand, you use your Winterfenner or your Scourfin or something to buff the card in your hand. Well, this is not only going to get those stats, but it's going to also get an additional 2/2. Cool. That's nice. But the other things, because of this wording, means when this is in the tavern, right? Just in the void of the tavern, if you were to play something like a Fiery Fellblood and have your tavern get buffed, well, every time you're buffing your tavern, this should also buff by +2/+2, right? That's where I think this thing gets interesting. So if you're playing tavern scaling, you have another minion here that is going to be chonky. If you're playing, you know, anything that's just buffing this minion, I think it's going to be interesting to see. So the other thing, because it's written whenever this gains stats, add +2/+2 to that amount, I think if you're getting in combat scaling that is not permanent, I would assume that this +2/+2 is also not permanent. However, if you're getting something like the Trant to give your minions permanent attack, I would assume that that +2/+2 would also be permanent, even though it's in combat. I don't know, like sometimes Blizzard codes things weird and they don't work quite that way, but we'll see. We'll see if it ends up working that way. The way it's worded, it should work that way. That also means like Deathwing buffing this card would give it extra permanent +2/+2. So you can play this against a Deathwing or you can play this while you're Deathwing. Either way, I think this is going to be a really interesting card to see. It's kind of a Bream replacement. You can't cycle to buff it, but you can buff it with like Scourfins and Winterfenners and anything like that that buffs your hand. That's this will be interesting to see. Also, Diremuk Forager would buff this. All right, we have another Murloc, a tier 4 Murloc, Fairy Guildmother. It's a 1/5. At the end of your turn, get a random Murloc. So you don't get to discover it, like Primal Fen, but it is a tier 4. It's more accessible, and this kind of is like a combination between a young Murkai and a Primal Fin anyway, because you would just be getting a random Murloc at the end of your turn. This synergizes with Drukhari. It can't synergize as much because you can't have a Baran and a Drukhari to, you know, make it go off like 6 times, but When this is gold, it gives you 2 random Murlocs. I think this is not a bad card. I think if you get this early as a Murloc player, you absolutely buy this and leave this on your board. And get some, you know, free cards. All right, we have a new pirate, Crow's Nest Sentry, tier 3. This one is a Battlecry pirate. Give your other pirates plus 3 health. I think giving pirates health is just good. It's just good in any situation. It's a Battlecry, so it's a cycle. You play it and trash it. It's done, right? Or, you know, if you have a young Murkai or something, you just have it go off a bunch of times and get your pirates really beefy. This is really nice with cleaves, obviously, because you want your cleaves to stay alive as long as possible because they're doing maximum damage. And pirates already are just a tribe that gets really attack heavy with low health. So I'm looking forward to seeing this buff out some pirate boards. Clunker Junker is a tier 4 mech. It is a Battlecry mech, which it's always interesting to see a Battlecry mech. This effect is choose a friendly mech, and then you discover a mech to magnetize to it. So I think playing this as a one-off, this is cool, right? You can play this, pick a minion that you want to magnetize, choose the best magnetization. When you're discovering, you basically can't find anything bad, I think, to magnetize to it. And then that's it. And then, you know, you move on, you sell it, and you get rid of it. Now, the interesting thing, if you decide to play this with like a young Murkai or something that's going to trigger the Battlecry, well, the way most Battlecries work when you have to choose a minion or choose a discovery is it just randomly picks something for you. So that means if you're running this with a young Murkai, this is going to pick one of your mechs at random, and it's going to add a random magnetization to it. So if you're doing anything like a Deflectobot build, this could be a nightmare. This could mean that it's going to put a taunt on your Deflectobot, or something that you just don't want to die, right? It could taunt your cleave, which, you know, could be rough for you. Now, if you're playing a utility drone heavy board, you have multiple utility drones, maybe you're running end of turn effects with a Drakari, this, I think, might not matter as much. Because at that point, you maybe don't care what you're magnetizing. Also, if you have a beatboxer, I think this, with a Battlecry proc, you know, you're running this maybe with like a young Murkai and a Drakari, and you have beatboxer, and you have utility drones. That could be pretty good. You're just getting end of turn mech scaling. And it's going to be, you know, extra with beatboxers and things like that. You get this gold, and it happens, you get 2 magnetizations added to it. So I do like this card. I think this opens up some new mech builds that aren't like Deflectobot specific. But it also is, it's kind of scary. I don't know, random is always scary. If you have a Whirling Lastomatic, you definitely don't want to taunt that thing and have it killed immediately, right? So, well, we'll see. We'll see how this does. But I'm excited to mess around with this. Alright, one of my favorite cards just because it's so cute.
My new favorite card as well.
The 3 little Quillbore. This is three cute, innocent little Quillbore that will help you decimate your opponents. This is a Death Rattle. Play 3 Blood Gems on your Quillbore. So, this is their alternative for Gem Smuggler. They took away Gem Smuggler, which was a battle cry. Play Blood Gems on all your minions. So now this is a Death Rattle. Play 3 Blood Gems on all your Quillbore. So there's a couple things interesting to see with this. It only procs in your Quillbore. So that means if you're running a Rivendare because you want this thing to go off, or you're running a Macaw because you want to get an extra Death Rattle proc on this, it won't buff that Macaw. It won't buff the Rivendare. It'll only buff your Quillbore. So I think this is a way of them trying to keep this card from getting too big, getting too broken. Because if you have a bunch of Quillbore Blood Gem scaling, and then you have this thing going off and it just is making your board like super, super, super big. It also means that, unfortunately, I would have loved to have done this, but it means that you can't run it with like a Terragosa. Because if you could run it with a Terragosa, then you could have been able to play this and have that happen. But what you can do, I don't know if it's worth taking up the spot, but something to think. is something you can do is you can play a poet and you can play an all-type minion. And technically that all-type minion would be a Quillbore, and it would get the blood gems, the 3 blood gems, and those would be permanent, right? So will we see that combo in Battlegrounds? Maybe. We'll have to see if that is worth it. Really depends on your scaling. And at that point, if you have scaling, it might just be better to have more Quillbore and not sacrifice spots to non-typed minions or non-Quillbore minions. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if these 3 innocent-looking low Quillbore are going to become nightmares or not. Alright, Jumping Jack is a duos only minion. It's a tier 3 all-type. And this is the first time this is sold. Pass it instead. I don't know what to think of this, right? Like, this is a...
Yeah, I don't really know the use for this.
The first time it's sold, pass it instead. My first thought is, it says the first time it's sold. So does that mean that you are actually selling it and getting a gold for selling it? And then, instead of going away into the void, it goes to your partner. That's okay. That becomes a decent cycling minion. Because that means that you're able to cycle it, get the gold, proc whatever if it's elemental cycling or Murloc cycling, whatever it might be. Like, you're going to get the cycling effect, but also you're going to give essentially your partner a minion that they can sell. Or they can send back to you. But the thing is, if they send it back to you, they're spending a gold to send it back to you. And then you're selling it, and I guess you would get another gold. But it's now gone. You can't, like, infinitely keep doing that, right? Because it says the first time it's sold, right? I think it'd be interesting if it was, like, the first time this is sold every turn. Then that could be something that might be interesting. But the way it stands, like, I don't know, very, very, like, situational of you happen to get a bunch of stats on this thing and you sell it so that you can pass it for free. And you actually get a gold from it, like, because you don't want it anymore. And then your partner can have it because they don't have as strong stats. Like, sure, like, I can see that. But as, like, some kind of big game-winning card, I just don't see this doing that, right? But in certain situations, I mean, think about it. If you get an early... If you get Tavern Scaling, you have a Famished Fellbat, you have this on your board because your other teammate doesn't really have anything big. You just let it grow for a few turns and then just get rid of it. Just sell it and it goes to your partner. That's something that could be interesting. We'll see. Some updates to existing minions or returning minions. We have King Bergurgle, which is a tier 5. I think it was a tier 4. Now it's a tier 5. Give your other Murlocs +3/+3. Battle Cry. Okay, cool. Imposing Percussionist. This is a returning demon. I believe this used to be a tier 5. It's now a tier 4. And it's just Battle Cry, discover a demon, deal damage to your hero equal to its tier. You can use this to just get a demon if you need a demon and you are willing to take damage. Or if you have a Soul Rewinder or some card that's going to stop you from taking damage, you get free demon discovery. Alright, gamers, that was it for the look at heroes and returning and leaving minions. We hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't already caught our video where we go over all the buddies, please make sure you catch that. Take a look at that. Also, if you enjoyed the video, enjoyed our content, please subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. We're a brand new growing channel, so every subscriber counts, you know? Let us know in the comments what you're excited for. I know that we'd love to chat with y'all about the new cards, the returning cards, and just have some fun Battlegrounds conversations. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you next time.